While understanding queerness and gender/sexual expression's essentiality to music and performance throughout history, as laid out in this piece and beyond, is vital, it's also crucial to understand the perspective of this work, the artists within it, and the ideas they all have been influenced by. In the United States and other parts of the Western world, queerness is engaged with as if it were a flowchart of identity. Much of the mainstream part of the Western world engages with the cis-trans binary, which places you as cisgender, transgender, non-binary, or somewhere in between. This is true with sexual orientation as well, placing individuals as straight, gay, bisexual, or somewhere in between. Even the somewhere in betweens get stuck in this rigid identity compartmentalization, being placed and better understood as bisexual but with a preference for men or women, or non-binary but more masculine or feminine presenting. Throughout history, these rigid boundaries of identity have consistently played a part in understandings of privilege and power dynamics, and these boundaries are no exception. In the beginnings of the European conquest of the world, indigenous gender variance was brutally quelled by European colonizers in their strongly held patriarchal and binary beliefs. It's partially the remnants of this colonizing decimation that has the cis, trans, and straight gay binaries dictating queer visibility to this day. Our Western ideological understandings of gender and sexual identity put an unnecessary pressure on labeling and categorization based on the rudimentary binary scales we have succumbed to. But these ideas and understandings are not the same, nor are they applicable in many other parts of the world. The analysis I have done in engaging with these artists, as well as the sources I utilized in the process, are through the perspective of these Western understandings of gender, sexuality, and queerness, albeit a more thorough and broader understanding than some, given my social locality in the queer community as a queer person and a student who studies gender, sexuality, and queerness, but still a Western understanding nonetheless. If I were to have discussed non-Western artists, different ideologies and understandings of queerness would have to be employed. By placing the queer identities of other cultures under the Western conventions and diluting them for Western understandings, we take away from the significance and richness these communities of queer folks experience. Unfortunately, there is a common tendency to frame cross-cultural gender-variant identities into terms and concepts that Western folks are more accustomed to. Had I chosen to discuss artists from these non-Western queer communities, the framing of these cross-cultural gender-variant identities would have needed some serious in-depth explanation to avoid the Euro-American dilution. The ways Prince and Lil Nas X experience queerness is not always comparable with someone from the South Asian Hijra community or the indigenous Two-Spirit community, for example, and therefore the comparison should not be made. By exploring artists within the Western sphere of queerness, I have covered the bounds of this realm, exploring the transnational realm of queerness in the context of music and identity. To do it justice should be its own body of work.